start with you. You've come here all the way from Burundi. Idriss, starting with you, maybe you could tell us a little bit about where you grew up beyond the country of Burundi. What was it like where you grew up, and who were sort of big influences on your life? And if you remember, what did you want to be when you were a child?
Thank you. I'm Burundian. I was born in Burundi and grew up there. I was born in a modest family with very hard-working parents, from a Christian family as well. And I studied in Burundi at the university, after which I joined Search for Common Ground. I've been always looking at journalism as a way to really facilitate dialogue and connect people. That's where I came from, and this is what I did for 20 years with Search for Common Ground. And then I'm proud of what we've been doing as we were able to create this space where people would gather and talk. I come from a society which is also has some ethnic problems and political problems. But
we'll get there in a minute.
Yeah.
Did you always want to be a journalist when you were a young boy? Or?
Yeah, I was always looking for that.
Yeah. Any influences in your life when you were young?
I don't know. I take journalism and peace building as a sort of religion, as a faith, because I grew up in a society which is some ethnic problems and political problems. I think living together is something we have to work for.
And yes, what about you? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Burundi. I was born in the central part of Burundi. That is the province of Tega. And I went to school in the north of Burundi. And while I was at secondary school, I was a member of a youth movement, Catholic youth movement, and I was elected to be president of the movement within my school, and I would always listen to radio and share information with my colleagues. And finally, when I finished secondary school, I entered the high school of journalism in Burundi, and then I became a journalist.
And is that what you always wanted to do?
And it is as a journalist that I joined the Search for Common Ground representative in Burundi in 1995 to start Studio Ejambo.
And when you were a little girl, you always wanted to be a journalist?
Not really. I grew up. I was born in a family which is also Christian, and my parents were simple people. My father was a judge, and when I was a little girl, I thought I would be a judge too, because my father was my mother.
I'm already intimidated by the father. Oh, judge as a father. So you mentioned 1995 is when you started working with a radio studio in Burundi, and you were referring to some ethnic divides. So 1995 is within 1 year of the genocide in neighboring Rwanda, where 800,000 people were killed in just 100 days. And Burundi was directly affected by this. Tell me a little bit, and share with us a little bit, Adrian, what the divides really were like at that time in Burundi. How did you experience them yourself, in any way?
Before I joined Search, you remember there was election in 1993 when the first Hutu president was democratically elected, and then there were some massacres. There were some political crises which followed, and this affected the University of Burundi where I was, and it worsened to the extent that students, because they were manipulated by some political actors, they were also divided, and then we found ourselves in two camps where people were saying, you guys go to there in your own people, in terms of Hutu and Tutsis and so on. And then this resulted in some massacres. God is great, I was not affected, but a lot of colleagues were killed, because of this kind of political manipulation by political actors. So
some of your peers at the university?
Yes, some were taken away and others were killed. I was glad and lucky not to be among them.
I was told that you happened to be sick one day when there was a major massacre at the university.
Yeah, I happened not to be there that day because I was in Zambia where we were doing our degree. But it was just a few days after our departure. So the origin of this kind of division is exclusion. I think it's the major problem in Burundi. Exclusion, where some people will not feel they are not taken into account in some institutions, or they felt they are not included in the governing systems. And I take this as the root cause of our conflict in Burundi. There are also a lot of people thinking in ethnic groups, and then when you are not in this group, they think you are enemies or you are a threat to them. And this was the first challenge that we were meeting as journalists, because people see you and then they think you have to be like that group, where maybe you are looked like devils, and the other group considers itself as angels, and then there are cliches on each group. Sometimes when you go to report, people see you as first as the group of Hutu or Tutsi, and that was the biggest challenge. So this is one of the origins of the problem, the exclusion and the cliché and stereotypes linked to this categorization of people into ethnic groups. And ethnicity is used by political actors as a motive to reach their interest, because once they tell people that they have to pay attention, it's a way of mobilizing people around them and then have support to reach their interest. Otherwise, communities have no problems among themselves.
And so, going back to those days then, you're talking about journalism. You all were the founding members of the first multi-ethnic radio studio in the entire Great Lakes region of Africa, and many people who have looked at the situation and know the history are aware that radio in particular was a very powerful tool used to foster the Rwandan genocide and turn people against one another. So before you all met each other, before you and Adrienne met each other and the other small, brave journalists who started that studio, how was the division in Burundi playing out in your life? Were you experiencing it at all in any way? He clearly, at his university campus, experienced it in a horrible and profound way.
For me, since 1993 already, I experienced the impact on my life within my family, the impact of these divisions between Hutu and Tutsis, and also on the political level, because the elected president was killed by the army, Hutu population, thought that the president, not the president of Burundi, the president was killed. So they responded by killing other people who were not members of the Hutu community. And then many members of my family were killed, and my mom survived and is now an internally displaced person because she left her own properties to come and live with us in Bujumbura. The other level was in Bujumbura as an area where I was living. It was divided between Hutus and Tutsis. While in general Hutus and Tutsis are living together in the neighborhood, this time, because of the political crisis, Hutus were chased in some suburbs, and the same for Tutsis. So we had Bujumbura divided in two parts, a part for Hutus and another for for Tutsis. So it was challenging for us as journalists because you are portrayed as a Hutu or as a Tutsi. For example, my friend Adrian would be more Tutsi than Tutsis in Burundi because the way the history portrayed these different groups was not really real. And the thing is, we can't say that there are different ethnies in Burundi because we, and Adrian, me being a member of a minority group called Baganwa, I speak the same language. We have the same references in history, and I think there is no different ethnies, maybe clans and communities, but we don't have really different ethnies.
So I want to get into how you all met and how you started collaborating, but let's bring Abby and Reverend Schenk into the room as well. So, Abby, where did you grow up? What did you want to be as a little girl? Who influenced you?
So I grew up in Los Angeles, in the Valley, and about a 5-minute drive from the Walt Disney Studio, where my father and my grandfather and my great-uncle went to work every day. And so I grew up a little bit inside of that place. It was a little bit home to me, which is surreal. I grew up in a very conservative family. I mean, my mother's side of the family is as Irish Catholic as it gets, to the point of hysterics, because it was crazy town. And to give you a sense of how conservative my father's side of the family was, my Uncle Walt picked up the phone and called Joe McCarthy and said, "May I please testify?" So just as background, John Birch Society conservative. So that was my upbringing. I had a handful of really wonderful special teachers who sort of took me aside and thought I was special and told me I was good. And I think that's what kept me on any heel. My plan for my life was literally, and I'm not making this up, I was going to play third base for the Dodgers. I was going to win an Academy Award, and then I was going to be president.
There's so time.
The Dodgers thing didn't work out so well. And now I live in New York, the Dodgers suck. But so that was my upbringing. I was only too pleased. I actually took out a tape measure to see if Yale was sufficiently far away, and I went off to Yale for college because I just wanted to not be in Los Angeles. And the minute I went to Yale, I started thinking differently about the world, and that brought me into an interesting relationship with my parents once I started going home. So I spent my 20s and the rest of my life, really, their lives really in a constant battle as Fox News rose and the dynamics between us changed to become harder and harder to go home.
Okay. Reverend Schenk, how about you? Where did you grow up?
Well, I'm Rob, by the way. Thank
Rob.
you very much for the honor. Appreciate that. But actually, kind of the diametric opposite of Abby. In a middle-class, nominally Jewish home in upstate New York. Anyone's playing a trivia game, Grand Island, largest freshwater island in the United States, between Canada and the U.S., 8 miles upstream from Niagara Falls. And growing up, we had a very average life. My parents were mostly, I think they would have described themselves as liberals, but we weren't sure exactly where we fit on that scale. And then in the late 70s, I was introduced to what now historically we're calling the Jesus People movement. And I heard claims about Christ. I found them very compelling. And at age 17, visited a church for the first time, heard the gospel preached, found it very compelling. Early on concluded that Jesus was probably a better Jew than anyone I knew. And I thought, well, I'm going to give him a try. And in fact did, in quite a dramatic way. If anyone has seen a Billy Graham crusade, people are invited to the altar to commit their lives to Jesus Christ. I did that as a 17-year-old, made my profession of faith, and from that moment on became convinced this would be the organizing element of my life. So I went on to become an evangelical minister, and then some years into that, encountered the pro-life movement, something called Operation Rescue. Saw it as a very compelling moral cause, and spent almost 30 years as an activist in that movement. So much so, I became committed enough that not only fought a Supreme Court case called Shank versus Pro-Choice Network, and won in part, lost in part, but mostly celebrated a victory with that, which gave people the right to distribute pro-life literature on sidewalks in front of abortion clinics, and eventually did prison time for my activist work. Eventually made a move to Washington, D.C., where I was given something of a chaplaincy, you could call it, to elected and appointed officials, but principally to the judiciary.
You were the chaplain to the Supreme Court justices, is that right?
That's my charge. Whether all of them accept me in that role is another question. But yes, I engage the justices, among others, in the judiciary in a ministerial capacity.
As we talk here today about creating common ground across these divides, I believe the U.S. Congress is mid-filibuster, or about to start a filibuster about whether you're about to get a new congregant or not.
Exactly. I expect I'll be welcoming a new charge.
Thank you. So let's move from before you met each other to how you met each other and why you decided to work together. We're going to start, Agnes, first with you, because I believe you came to the radio studio before Adrienne. In fact, did you interview Adrienne? Or you were involved in selecting Adrienne as part of the team?
Yes.
What motivated you to do this, Agnes?
Because we had these division of the community between Hutus and Tutsis, and within the studio, progressively, we became a mixed group of Hutu, Tutsi, and some other like me who was not Hutu or Tutsi. Then I started thinking, with whom should I partnership in my work? Then I went to the studio, started to ask everybody, do you feel that you are more Hutu or more Tutsi than more Burundian? And within the studio, Adrian was the only one to give me the response I was looking for.
What was that?
It was that he is more Burundian and a journalist. So I was looking for that because we don't need to be Hutus or Tutsis to do the right thing. We need, within the studio example, we need first to be journalists who are aware of what it implies. So as a citizen of Burundi, a country which was suffering because of this division and violence, I was thinking that we should transcend all what was happening to be able, as journalists, to do our job.
Were you, so I mean, we're going back to that time now, and you just described members of your family being killed.
Yes.
Adrian just described the massacres at his university. So rationally, I very much understand the power of bringing these communities together, especially on a nationally and regionally broadcast radio. But that had to feel a little bit frightening. I mean, were you at all nervous or apprehensive at that time? Do you remember how you felt doing this? Or were you just so focused and busy that you didn't step back?
I was worried about having all Burundians going down by identifying themselves by the ethnic background or political background, because we, as journalists, we had to bring all actors, especially politicians, to confront themselves, to be in coherence of these going on civil war and confrontation between Hutu and Tutsis.
I don't know if you remember asking you that question and the way you answered, but how about for you, Adrian? I mean, so you come out of university, you, by luck, you've survived horrible violence. The country's still beset in violence. There's been a genocide next door. What made you decide you wanted to do this? And were you nervous?
Yeah, sometimes we were nervous because first we needed to build trust and confidence within the group, and with time we were discussing. I remember sometimes we had some very serious debates, even some misunderstandings among ourselves, and how we need to trust one another and report on some issues, because we represented the whole community. So sometimes we were nervous, but then we ended up agreeing on how do we do it. If we disagree here, how should we be able to go and look for stories and report it in a positive way? If we are not agreeing, if we are not reaching a common ground within ourselves, we were 5 at the beginning, I think, 5 reporters, and we needed to have the common understanding of how do we need to address some issues before we go to the ground.
Why? I mean, it sounds very rational and brave now, but when you think back, why didn't you simply accept no, you're Hutu, you're with us. Why didn't you accept that? Did somebody influence you? Why were you, I mean, most of the country was being pulled apart in this way, and even people who might have felt the way you did might not have reached out and done something about it. Why do you think you did?
I had been witness of many cases of injustice. You know, I grew up in the country. I saw a lot of cases of injustice, and I felt that we could change something. In myself, I felt that we are not different. If you look at me and Agnes, we are different, but when you look at the way we work our daily needs, we are not very different. And then I felt that we could do something with journalism, and we had heard what had happened in Rwanda, where journalists had exasperated conflict, and I felt that we could change something. And in our daily life, we were trying to walk the talk as well, because on the ground we would, share the same bottle of beer, Agnes and I, because yes, and then people looked at us and said, "How do you share with her?"
Tell me, Adrian, so you start working together now. So you make he answers your question correctly, and he's hired, and now you're working together. It was sort of 5 journalists at the start, I think in a basement, really. Eventually you established a studio that became, and if you haven't looked up Studio Ijambo or ever heard of it, look it up. It's a case study of the powerful use of media to prevent violence and reconcile communities. So thinking back on your journey together then, you start working together, many years you worked together, more than a decade. Was there a key moment or moments that stick out to you that were particularly important in either bringing you together or maybe almost pulled you apart? Do you remember any such moments?
Well, while being in the Studio Jambo, it wasn't challenging, because in Studio Jambo we were trying to build bridges, bringing together those divided people and offering them a space to express themselves, to think together and find out what they had in common. I would say Adrian and I, we have in common the culture, the language, and the history. We also have in common our country, which is Burundi. The same thing was happening for those politicians. We tried to show them that they have common interests and that they have to work together, find out their commonalities, and then build on that. But when we were on the ground, looking for stories. It could be dangerous for me because I was in Hutu and we were in a Hutu area, or it could be dangerous for Adrian while we were in the Tutsi area. So being together was somehow,
Your protection.
yeah, the kind of protection and security. We were protecting each other according to the place where we were. And I
That's
remember,
profound trust in each other.
and I remember one day we had a car accident, remember? And then the people who came to help us came from the bush and they were Hutus. And then the driver was also a Hutu. And then I was very anxious. Then I told Adrian and the driver, please do quelque chose, do something, talk to these people before. And then they brought these people to consider me as just as a journalist, not as a member of a different ethnic group. And it works.
And this happened a lot of times because sometimes you go in the community and they look at me and say, who is that woman actually? Right? Who is she? And then I said, no, this is our colleague and we're working together. She's a colleague, she's a kind person and she's a human being as you guys. And why do you work together? I said, no, she's a colleague and she's a very good person. So this was a very good strategy to pair people from different groups, because then we could show that though we are coming from different communities, we are still able to work together and have this solidarity and bring up some good stories. And the other need for working together was also to be able to go in depth and bring out some perspectives from different communities. Because I talked about perceptions, negative perceptions. As a Hutu, I could go to a Tutsi community and then they say, why do you need to trust him? But if I'm with Agnes, people would open up themselves and tell us, because we are there and then we are looking for the stories, the opinions, and the kind of solutions they have. So pairing people together would guarantee our security and also, help us have this sensitivity and be able to bring stories from different communities and have a trust that one person could not really get from a community, because we are living in a very stereotyped community where we don't easily trust someone we don't know. So
you all became on the second point, you all became the stringers and the journalists on the ground for Agence France Presse, for Deutsche Welle, for Associated Press, Reuters, because of this dynamic. I remember when I was there, even the people who were angry that you were telling stories were all listening to your stories, because they were the only ones that actually could tell the full picture of what was going on. And so, Rob, so you've had this profoundly religious experience, and I want to get to the point where you and Abby connect with one another. You hadn't heard of Abby before she reached out to you, is that right?
No.
Okay. What did you think when she did? And take us to the point, what motivated you to actually begin speaking with her?
Well, she asked me to discuss my evangelical community's disposition towards gun ownership and use, particularly in defensive applications. And I was aware that we were pretty big on the Second Amendment, probably bigger on the Second Amendment than on the Second Commandment, but that's an inside theological.
So for those, most people will know, but in the U.S., you're talking about gun control and right to bear arms.
Exactly. We would be a community, one of the top in terms of support for unfettered gun rights, and would have, of religious communities, probably the most likely to have access to firearms or to own them. And that was something of a concern to me, although on the whole, I was theoretically with our community that people had the right to defend themselves and to defend their loved ones. It had to be done responsibly and so on. But Abby was raising an ethical question about that as much as anything else. And I was curious about that. It wasn't until we were sitting at dinner together that it dawned on me that Abby was on the different end of the political, social spectrum than me, way over Pluto or something like that. And then I learned that only a few years earlier, Abby and I, we've said this often about each other, probably you may have been the first to observe that we likely would not have met one another except maybe across a police tape in front of a Planned Parenthood facility or something. And you can guess which side either of us would have been on in those days. Nonetheless, I have to say, in those early conversations, Abby made it very safe for me to be who I was. And she was very non-threatening in who she was. And that eased the conversation. She then proposed that maybe I place a role in a documentary film that might follow questioning my community on this subject of guns. And just follow it wherever it would go. I didn't make a yes to that invitation very easy on you, did I? It took an agonizingly long time.
So let's hear your, it's not, unlike everyone else on this stage, you actually knew of
Yes,
Rob.
yes.
You knew him as Reverend Shank at that point, not Rob.
Everything on Google was really awful. He was awful.
So what, given that, why reach out and have dinner with someone who makes you feel that way?
So first of all, my upbringing in a very conservative family gave me the capacity to understand that while you may disagree with someone violently, I mean, almost to blows, you still love them. You do still love them, and you do still understand that people believe what they believe, and it may be completely the opposite of what you believe, but that doesn't make them bad people, that doesn't make them stupid people, that doesn't make them brainwashed, that doesn't make them all these things. And, you know, frankly, I left for college a pro-life person. I had been raised, steeped very deeply in the Catholic tradition. I haven't given it any thought one way or the other. I just know that I was, that's what everybody said, so I went to college thinking that. So it took me a few years really to form my own ideas about that. So I also understand that people who are pro-life, generally speaking, really believe something in their deepest hearts that goes to the question of meaning of life and death, and they're not bad people. So I knew there would be somebody over there, on Planet Crazy, as I thought of it, who was acting in good faith, who was really working from a belief system that was genuine. And that I had, I had, because the first film I ever made was about a peace movement in Liberia, I had spent some years now learning from peace builders and thinking of this thing called peace building, which is a real thing, and I thought, I've been asked to go around speaking about peace building and women and the difference that they make. And one day in northern Mexico, I thought, who do I think I am? Who do I really think I am as an American woman to be standing here in northern Mexico where I know there are 250,000 weapons flowing from Texas and Arizona every year into inflaming this conflict. And I'm standing here talking about peace. How dare I? I have to go home and make peace in my country. I love the Skoll Forum, and I love flying around and talking about international issues, but if I don't go home and work on my own country, everyone in the countries I care about will continue to suffer from our addiction to violence. What I wanted to do was see if there was a way to break the political dynamic around guns, which was that, I say X, you say Y, I say X times 2, you say Y times 2, and we just, this is forever. There is no changing that dynamic. I wanted to end run around it, and I wanted to see if there was a higher reason or a higher analysis than just the political dynamic. I wanted to see if somebody was willing to take the risk of stepping into a higher space and talking about it from a place above politics. And that's why I called Rob. I wanted to find somebody who, I'm sorry, was like the worst possible person. and then just go and test my faith that no, actually, as bad as somebody seems on Google, there's a person in there. And you have to trust that, and you have to go in peace, and he doesn't have to become like you, or you don't have to change his mind.
Okay, so you choose Rob as the most equal person.
All the way on the train, on the way down, as I was looking through the Google pages I had printed out, I was just hitting my head on the table in front of me, because I was like, why am I doing this? This is terrible. I had a bruise on my head.
So you start filming, if people haven't seen Armor of Light, it's one of the more powerful documentaries you will see, certainly on the issue of guns, gun rights, gun control in the United States, and it documents some pretty profound transformation in your own views and your activism on this issue. So you decided to make this film. Once you started working together, I'm curious, the same question I asked again and yes, were there any sort of key moments for you in this process that either sort of helped you get over the planet Pluto, planet crazy, worst person possible, and actually bonded you more, or almost tear you apart? Was there a key moment or two that you can think of? I'll start with you, Abby.
Yeah. The Planned Parenthood tapes were a very hard thing for me. They actually came out after the film was finished, and we were just starting to show it in places, and I found myself...
So for people who don't know,
the Planned Parenthood tapes, Rob knows most of the players involved. There were a series of tapes made by people who were pretending to be medical researchers, and they were negotiating with people at Planned Parenthood about how much would the lab fees be and what would it cost, because Planned Parenthood has for years contributed tissue from abortions to medical research. They were edited to mischaracterize the Planned Parenthood people as saying that they were selling embryos for profit. It continues to be a belief among pro-lifers that is the truth. That's what happens.
So this happened while you already knew him. Now at this point you've been working together.
I knew him, and we had our
Have you talked
film.
about abortion at that point? Because that was the...
Our film has a person who was the chair of the board of the organization, Troy Newman, who's now the head of Operation Rescue. So I met and talked to Troy on numerous occasions. I got into it with Pat, a friend of Rob's, about Planned Parenthood tapes, and I found myself saying, if they kill Cecile Richards, your blood is on your hands, and I am coming for you. So I did have moments where it was really more than just, because this is more than just an idea. This is people's lives, and it's really hard not to be passionate. So when Rob and I first met, I said to him, look, I know we disagree about something that's very deep in our hearts. It's one of our most closely held belief systems. But I also know that if we just choose to take this issue and set it aside just for now, we'll talk about it later. Let's just choose to inhabit the shared ground. Let's just choose to just inhabit it for a while and ask ourselves, like, are we on the other side of the police state actually because we're more alike than different? Actually because we share most of our principles? Because in fact, the difference on pro-life is a decision on the decision tree that isn't that weird. It's not that weird to say life begins at conception. It's also not that weird to say it begins later. That shouldn't be the root of all evil. That's not a strange or unreasonable difference of opinion, and we should be able to navigate around this issue. But over time, I felt myself wanting to talk to him about the question. I mean, I had to say to myself, and this is maybe the hardest thing in the world for me to do, in terms of my personality, I had to say to myself that it's not my job to change Rob's mind. That I don't, in fact, would prefer not to try and persuade him of anything, except that I'm not a bad person. And this was very personal to me because I had had an abortion in 1981 when I was 21 years old. And that was always in the back of my head around all of this. And if you listen to the people in his world, in his community, when they talk about what abortion is and what it does, and how they think pro-choice people are, it's very hard to hear that, knowing that you're one of them and could never talk about it. So there was a particularly right-wing dinner that you made me come to that Ann Coulter spoke at, and it was just horrible. And literally, I stood on the toilet and almost threw up because it was so bad. And
the invocation.
he was giving the opening prayer, I felt Rob was on a high wire. He was exposing himself to so much danger. in professionally, but also personally, in terms of really taking this gun issue on, because there was so much that he was questioning in terms of orthodoxy. He was putting himself at such risk, and I felt, at a personal level, we had become close friends. I felt very responsible for him, and I felt that I was asking him to take this enormous risk.
Because you're filming and go through this transformation.
Yes, and I wasn't in any risk myself. I wasn't taking a risk, and that just felt in such bad faith, so I thought I owed it to him to take a risk. So the next day after that dinner, I called him, and I said, I feel like I need to tell you this, and if he wants to tear up the contract and not work with me, I'll completely understand, which there are filmmakers here and will understand. It's a really hard thing to say. I said I had an abortion when I was 21, and there was a long silence on the other end of the line. I really had no idea what he was going to say. And he said, why wouldn't I want to work with you? So that is a deeply Christian response. And I was so grateful for it. We didn't talk about it again then, but we have since. And it's been an amazing conversation. I'm happy to tell you about it if you want to hear about it. But I'm grateful to him because I happen to believe that whether you're Jewish or Christian or Muslim or whatever, if Christians behave like Christians, everyone will be better off.
So I'm very interested to get into the discussion, but I want to have each of you reflect on something before we open it up. Rob, we'll start with you. I guess it'd be brief, kind of your perspective on that conversation. And then off of that, I'd like you to reflect a little bit for the group. What impact do you think you and Abby, your work together, is actually having?
Well, first, I'll just put a little asterisk on and say that what helped so much in our early conversations was that Abby is bilingual. She speaks conservative and so I'm big for bilingualism. The other was she framed this as a pro-life ethical concern. I'm coming to a point in my own evolution, if you will, where I'm realizing that for most of my pro-life activism years, I was far more anti-abortion than I was pro-life. And that had a profound impact on me to come to that revelation about myself. But when Abby shared her own personal story with me, I remember that vividly. I know exactly where I was driving when you called. I know exactly where I pulled over to listen to you.
It wasn't like...
No, it was, I needed to pull over. As you were telling me that, first of all, I felt deeply, deeply honored that Abby would share that story with me. To this moment, I feel deeply honored by it. And I hope I conveyed that to you afterwards. And then suddenly that whole question became deeply personal and human to me. Prior to that, it was a cause, it was an issue, it was legislative, it was constitutional, it was so many things, but it wasn't deeply personal. And when I heard that, it had a profound effect on me, reoriented me completely. And so things became easier, both on the gun question, gave me a lot of courage to move forward. And as far as the effect, I've gotten all kinds of reactions from my world, which, if you've studied American evangelicalism, we're a little conservative. No, we're absurdly conservative. And yet we follow a radical. I would make an argument today that Jesus was a radical. He was not a conservative. Just in my world, my conservative world, I often get the question, how can you do that? Maybe it was similar. I was resonating with what the two of you were saying completely in that way. Who is she?
Yeah.
Who is this Abby Disney?
He would vouch for me in his world, and I would vouch for him in my world, just the way that you two did. That sounds so familiar.
And yet, as we get past that, and talk about the reason that we're doing this and the way we're framing it, people relax. And they, just like the two of us, I was being very inspired. In my world, what the two of you were saying, we often say, that'll preach. That'll preach. That's good sermon content because we protect each other. And Abby and I do that. Because I endorse her and she endorses me, I think our respective worlds relax with that. And that's salutary. So I would say a lot of good is being done by these two, and I hope
really
our...
briefly, the two of us have walked into and showed them in and then followed the conversation. Many very conservative churches, just really conservative churches. And the conversation that follows, I always start with, I'm a pro-choice feminist all my adult life. And then we proceed to have a conversation. And we can have a conversation. It's astonishing. And there ends up being quite a transformative conversation in almost every case. I think we're making a difference.
And lastly, Shamil, just, I can't count the number of times my folks have said, she's not so bad.
And vice versa.
I want to give the last word to Adrian and Agnes before we open it up. So the same question to you. What impact did your cooperation in this radio studio in the height of war actually have? What impact do you think it had?
I think on the community level, we might have to bring our political actors to accept, to come together and start to dialogue, even before the peace talks started. The youth, which is manipulated by political actors, now they are aware that they should not listen the political actors who are pushing them to violence not for the interest of the youth, but for the interest of the political actors. Recently, with the 2015 crisis, they didn't accept to follow the actors. And that was on the community level. Then within the journalists themselves, I believe that we have had an impact on those who were working in the government media and acting as propagandists or griot, because today they understand that we were the one who were doing the right thing. Why they were accusing myself, because I was correspondent of Voice of America, of being someone who was working for the CIA. Now they understand that I was doing the correct thing.
So, you know, Rob and Abby have reflected on how their communities, particularly Rob, have reacted, a mix of reactions, some negative reactions. I remember you receiving a call from the Minister of Defense calling you an ethnic traitor, which was essentially a death sentence at that time. So I know you faced a whole range of reactions. Adriana, I will end with you and on the same question. So anything you would add? I mean, Burundi is in political crisis now. She mentioned it since 2015. People look at, well, did you have any impact?
Yeah, we had a great impact. She mentioned on the dialogue issue, but also we influenced the media landscape because Studio Ijamo started as the pioneer of private media. The first partner was the National Radio, which did not voice some people, particularly those who were in political opposition, but we guaranteed that to have those people on air, though it was very challenging. So we were giving voice to the voiceless, the marginalized groups, and then they were heard, so that the decision makers could also take into account their opinions as well. We highlighted heroes, and that was a very good an approach that we are proud of. there are people that we call pillars of humanity. Those who took risks during the killings, during massacres, who have never been heard of. We went into the country and interviewed them and aired their opinions, their testimonies, and so on. And then people who had said, are you guys building stories, or are you saying that there are Hutus who saved Tutsis? Are you saying there are Tutsis who saved Hutus, and vice versa? People couldn't believe these stories, but through time, these people became, because some people treated them as traitors, because when I say I have hidden someone who is perceived as an enemy, and then those who were taken as traitors turned into heroes, because these people were able to save and protect lives, and it was very risky. So people were afraid to say that they saved people. When we aired these stories, they said, oh, I also saved X, Y, Z. And many families came out and said, oh, if my family is still alive, it's because of her. She has hidden my family for 6 months. And then those who were perceived as traitors became heroes because everybody was proud. We organized a national summit of heroes, and we invited the government and the opposition, and everybody was, even the president himself said, oh, finally we have people to rely on. We didn't know these people existed. Because we highlighted them, we showed, okay, we have some problems, but we also people who are humane, people who care about women's lives, and this is something that we need to show, and show that within communities we have people who do well, people who deserve this kind of respect.
So, you know, just to put a fine point on it, because you're quite modest actually in what you're saying, even with the profound. I remember the highest-ranking American diplomat on Africa at the time, Assistant Secretary of State George Moose for African Affairs, credited the studio with, in his words, preventing genocide. And this showing Kingi Ubuntu, Pillars of Humanity, you went within a year of people not talking openly about ethnicity at all to, I remember this, them all being on the stage, the Kingi, the Pillars, and that included farmers and military people, businessmen in every walk of life, going from nobody talking about it to now that word in Kingi no longer just means pillars as a pillar in a building, it actually means a hero of interethnic solidarity. So he had quite an impact.
If you don't mind, I would like to add something. Recently, before I left to come here, I had a meeting with the UNESCO representative within the Eastern Africa. Then I was honored to hear that this Nkingi Ubuntu has inspired the UNESCO's program, The Culture for Peace.
Right.
And I think if we didn't do that, they would never have had this example to build on the culture for peace.
Can I add something?
I'm going to stop.
Can I add something?
You can add it in the discussion. I get to be the journalist in the interrogation. I love this. I remember the years when you guys were the toughest journalists in the country. But I would, because you know, we have two pairs of people up here with profoundly different issues and stakes, but very similar dynamics that I see. And I want to sort of elicit, at least take a few questions from the audience so that you all can share it. I don't want to assume I know what people are thinking. So please, sir, and wait for the microphone.
While we're waiting for the microphone, I'm just going to say, take word of this back to all your moderate Republican friends. Because we need them to be pillars.
I'm Rick Spence from Toronto. For Agnes and Adrian, for those of us who didn't do our homework for this panel and don't really understand the difference between Tutsis and Hutus, can you tell us sort of what the origins is, and whether when you were working together, there were behaviors, beliefs that brought you into conflict that you actually had to overcome in order to work together?
First of all, I would like to make it clear that we have a big problem, which is originated by the fact that there is a confusion about what you call political majority and and political minority with this ethnic thing. Then people don't understand that we do not have ethnicity in Burundi. It was a political creation of ethnicity because they wanted to divide Burundians into two groups. Then, this has an impact on two other minority groups, minority communities, which are not mentioned in the narratives of the Burundi conflict. Those two minorities are Batwa, what you call Pygmies, and the Baganwa community, which is also a small community. So, historically, they have been well, sometimes Baganwa are killed,
considered either as
Hutu
or
Tutsi. And the big thing is when we are confronted to violence, when it is Tutsis who are killing Hutus, they also kill Baganwa. When it is the Hutus who are killing Tutsis, the Hutus also kill Baganwa, thinking that they are Batutsi. Because all those things has something to do with the power.
And
how do you accede, or how do you live the power?
This question about were there actually any behaviors or anything that pulled you apart?
I think there's something to make more clear than that. This Hutu and Tutsi issue is traditionally something that was rather social. A Hutu was something who did not have enough means, who had to go to work for someone else, not related to his physical portrayal. And then, a Hutu would be someone who came and worked for someone. But then when the colonization came, they sort of defined a Hutu as someone who is tall, big nose, not very intelligent, and very, very short, something like those. And a Tutsi should be high and very tall and straight nose and so many stupid definitions. And then, we fall in this kind of confusion because some people were killed because they were thought to be Tutsis or Hutus. And when we're walking, it's not very easy to know who is what. I was in Germany sometimes and then they said, who are you? Because I'm taller than many Tutsis. And then they said, who are you? I said, no, I'm Burundian first. Because it's even very embarrassing for us to define ourselves as a Hutu or Tutsi, just because they compel us to consider ourselves as a Hutu or Tutsi. Otherwise, if you rely on these physical definitions, you'll be completely confused because it's something that has been politicized, and there are so many children who are born from Hutu and Tutsis. What do they become? Are they Hutu or Tutsis? And we have so many cases of these people who find themselves as Burundians and not in these categories. So the challenge for us was to say, look, we are Burundians, let's work for everybody and observe dignity and humanity for everybody, and then period.
And this is the reason why I choose to work with Adrian, because when he came into Studio Jambo, I didn't know who he was, if he was a Hutu or a Tutsi, because when you are not neighbors and see when he was born, in which family he was born, you will never tell if he is a Hutu or Tutsi. So you see,
and there is no region in Burundi which is for Hutus, no region for Tutsis. We speak the same language. Wherever you go, speak the same language, and you are understood by everybody. You have within one family those who are both called Hutus or Tutsis. It's a lot of confusion, but political actors use this for political motives to reach political interests, and then they use it to tell people, hey, watch out, pay attention, and then
So,
we have to pay attention. So
thank you. We have just a few minutes left, and then you, Miss, and then Kennedy, so please, go ahead first.
Hi, I'm Joanne Sprague.
Wait for the microphone, please. She's running. Thank you.
Joanne Sprague from San Francisco. I think this is maybe one of the most profound panels that I've seen on the slate for Skoll. So I'm just so thankful that this is happening. I think it should have been on the main stage. My question is, this is really hard work, right? I mean, each of you have had the ability to have the self-awareness and personal identity and communication skills to be able to do this. So how do we replicate this? How do we get people to think beyond the personal credibility risk of staying within their own space and get people to take the risk to work across lines and to do this in a way that can be at scale and can start to come onto main stages, not only at school but around the world?
That's such a good question, and I'm really, really wrestling with it myself. And Whitney and I are talking about how we're going to maybe make an app that will connect people across political lines and give them some ground rules for talking about it. Because there were some ground rules for me, one of which was you're not allowed to try to change anybody's mind right out of the gate. Like, if you let that go, it's amazing the nice conversations you'll have. And you have to ask questions that you genuinely, not rhetorical ones, the ones you actually don't know the answer to. And then you have to actually shut up and listen. And then you have to actually consciously try to find something that's important to both of you that you agree about. There was a really interesting moment in one of the churches where very often you get an NRA guy who gets up and he goes through the 6 or 8 things that they always say, and I just let them go all the way to the end. And this time, as an experiment, I said to him, we could do this all day. I have a fact for every fact you have, argument, counter-argument, baseline, forehand, backhand. We could do this forever, so let's try and see if there's anything we agree about. If you had a taser or a gun and somebody's breaking into your house, it's the kind of taser that works every single time, and I know real tasers aren't reliable. They always argue that when you ask them. If you really get them to really focus on the idea that you could use a non-lethal form of self-defense and get the same result, or a lethal form, he said, I'd choose the taser. And so I said, great, we just walked to the net and shook hands. And on his way out, the thing was still going on, but he really went out of his way to get my attention. He said, which was really interesting, right? He didn't leave there feeling angry that I had run up to him or something along those lines. He was really relieved to find out that actually there were things that we could settle on. And so the way to get this to scale, I don't know. I don't know what the mechanism is, but I do know that the way to make people want to do this is it's all rewards at the end. I have a friend I never thought I'd have, and I've learned so much from him, and he's just a gift in my life. And so it's all rewards at the other side, but it's just that the bridge across is hard work, and it involves suppressing some of the things you're proud of yourself for, like you think you're so good at arguing things and you can change everybody's mind and all of the things that we feel. And and you get people on your own side saying things like, how dare you legitimize this person and this kind of thing I've gotten. But if you just walk your walk and go forward, it's all rewards on the other side.
Let me just say, because I want to get one more question in, and I'm sorry we don't have time for more than that, but as a shameless plug, we put this event, and we're very thankful to the organizers for putting this on the very first morning, because my selfish purpose here is to have everyone in this room both inspired but also challenged by what these people have demonstrated, and challenged to understand that this isn't just about building bridges, but about actually having a much more profound and sustainable impact when you form common cause with your adversary than when you just go to war with them. And on Friday, the organizers have been kind enough to also add a session at 10 o'clock in the morning called Common Ground Activism. It's a workshop in Classroom 2 here in the West Wing, where we'll go at exactly your question. We'll have people, that'll be much more interactive, and I'll be leading that, and have people break into small groups where you take the issues that are most important to you, the ones that make your blood boil, and we go through some exercises. Because there are 2 ways to think about peace building. One is it's a cause just like any other important cause, like anti-poverty, or climate change, or nuclear non-proliferation. Or you can think about it in the way that we think about it, which it's the key that unlocks progress on all of those issues. And that the reason that we are not making more progress on these profound issues today is that we, across all of our cultures, have really defaulted to a very adversarial win-lose approach, which in an interconnected world produces a lose-lose outcome. So I welcome people 10 a.m. Kennedy, the gentleman in the back.
My name is Kennedy Odede. Inspired and then I like the word search for common ground, which is the word common ground, which is for me is a gray area. So I want to ask a question from Rob and Abby. If you know Abby, Abby can be a little bit the other side of the word and Rob. And I want to just understand, was it by acknowledging each other, or is it about forgiveness? What really happened? And then for Adrian and Agnes, I'm coming from Kenya. And you know what happened in the year 2007? We killed each other, so sad. And we're having another very heated election in the next 4 months. I'm a little bit scared. And because in Kenya we have the Luos who can speak Luo, and Kikuyu who speak Kikuyu, it's not made up. So, and there's a lot of this kind of hatred going on. What can we do? And what can we do as a group? So, thank you.
I'll start with you, Rob.
For me, it was the real breakthrough with Abby and forging a friendship. And I would say the friendship I have with Abby now is one of the deepest I've ever had in my entire universe of friendships. It's a very deep friendship. And that started when I went through a spiritual exercise, coming to a point where I could honor Abby as a human being, as a fellow human being, not perceive her as an activist or an advocate for another cause, any cause, especially one inimical to my principles. Instead of classifying her as that, I had to come to a place where I accepted, and pardon the preacher in me, but I had to ask God to help me in that. And it became a prayerful exercise to pray for Abby, to thank God for Abby, and to honor her as a human being, a creation of God. And from that point on, I fell in love with her. And she has enriched my life. And so it's not always that simple or easy, but that was the real moment for me.
I don't feel like forgiveness is an interesting word in this context, because it's not my place to forgive him. And I hated when people would say, how dare you legitimize him? He's legitimate. I mean, how dare you imply he shouldn't be seen as legitimate? And this is such a huge problem with the way we're understanding our politics. Our people of the left, just to say that, I mean, most people here that's my tribe. And it was amazing in making the film how hard it was to pull all of ourselves back constantly from editorializing on his positions. You know, whenever, you know, he said something in the film, or there's a moment at the beginning where he's carrying a fetus at the protest, it was hard not to undercut that in some way. And, you know, we had so many people come through and say, well, you know, it's great, the film's great, you gotta take the fetus out, you know, because that's horrible, you can't let him do that. And I said, no. And actually, I was going to call it The Fetus Stays in the Picture, but I'm not in a position to give anybody.
It was 20 years.
But this is like, he was doing something from his deepest principles, and it was courageous, and it was risk, and it was everything I admire in a person, except for the fact that he had a different interpretation of things than I had. And that seems like a small thing, and certainly not something that I need to forgive. And I think those of us on the left who sort of live, eat, and breathe the idea that we're right about absolutely everything, and so there's language right now around not legitimizing people and not normalizing people. I think it's really First of all, we're really mistaking ourselves for gods. And we need to take ourselves down like 50 pegs. And the other is, it's not practical. Because, you know, the whole country is divided in half. And you're never going to talk the other half into your position. You're never going to fight or challenge the other half into your position. So what you have to do is recognize there's conflict, and it's all around us, and it's in every shot, shooting through every piece of everything we do. And we have to say, this is the conflict. We are inhabiting it. Let's choose to inhabit it differently. Let's choose to be different people in this conflict.
So I'm sorry, I'm getting the flag, and I know some of the people in the audience that are doing profound work themselves, and I'm sure those I don't know are also doing it and have profound questions. I encourage you, Kennedy, to come up and talk to Adrian and Agnes about your question. They have specifically worked to prevent election violence quite effectively. Agnes has traveled much of Africa training some of the other radio teams with whom we work in Central African Republic. Really powerful work. Last thing I will end with first is to thank you again, to remind those of you who are interested in the question that was asked, how do you actually do this, to come to the 10 a.m. Classroom 2 workshop in this West Wing. And to flag one last thing for you, we all know that Bono is here. And yes, Adrian and I got to hang out with him a little bit last night because our great board member just told him, you have to sit down, and he did. And if you haven't, you know, he's known for a lot of his activism, but if you haven't read the story in The Guardian or elsewhere about how he engaged with Jesse Helms, the ultra-conservative senator, United States Senator from North Carolina, to achieve debt relief for Africa, it was one of the best examples of common ground activism you'll find. He refused to humiliate him in public. He refused to give in to the people on his own side, including The Edge, his guitarist, to not talk to him in this way. He spent time with him. He listened to understand, not to convince. And he talked to Helms about his value position. And ultimately, Helms admitted to breaking down fine at one point before he pushed through debt relief for Africa. So this works. It works at every level. So hope to see you on Friday, and thank you all for your work.